32 or 33 or 34, somewhere in there. Let's take a look, chapter 4. Nayam loko asti ayagyasya kuto nya kuru satama. The best of the kurus. So it says here, this world is not for those who don't perform yajna. What to speak of the other world. Even this world is not meant for those who don't perform yajna. What to speak of the other world. So the last verse says, Yanti Brahma Sanatana. People who do yajna, they go to the eternal Brahman. And so it's been contrasted in this verse. Even in this world is even for you if you don't do yajna. What to speak of that world. So if you're interested in that world, you have to do yajna. But if you don't do yajna, you can't even effectively live in this world. And it's almost like you might make an argument that someone should give charity if they want to be considered a devotee. And then you might say, even a materialist gives some charity. You're not even a decent materialist if you don't give charity. What to speak of a devotee? You follow? Sometimes you make it like almost like a style of speaking to make a point. If you're trying to persuade someone to do something, instead of saying that if you do X, you're going to be, P. If you do X, action X, then you will be person P. You get it? But it's almost like saying you won't even be person Q if you don't do action X. Like you're not even what you want to be. You won't even, if you don't do this, you won't even be down here. And so it's a way of trying to convince somebody of something by pointing out that you're thinking you're going to do some great thing by doing this. This just gets you in the running. This isn't even special. This just gets you up to the... You can imagine if you're lifting weights with somebody and they're putting a small amount of weight on the bar and they think they're doing a big deal, you might say to them, that says my kids can lift more than that. You can't put that on the bar, you're not even as strong as my children, with to speak of being able to lift weights with me. Does that make sense? So Krishna is essentially doing that same kind of speech here. This world, ayam loka, not this world, asti, is. This world is not for ayagyasya, for those who do not do yajna. Even this world is not for you if you don't do yajna. What to speak of that world? You don't even get to stay in this world. You get it? Kutta anya. What of another? Where is there another world for you? How is there another world for you? You're not even, this world doesn't even belong to you. You got to get out of this world. You got to leave this world. Let's speak of another world. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet or in this life, then what of the next? Even Prabhupada's translation carries with it, then what of the next? So he's... It's almost a little bit poetic, Krishna's style of speaking. Evam bahuvidha yagya vitata brahmano mukhe. All these different types of yagyas are spread out from the mouth of Brahman. They're all spreading out from the mouth of Brahman. They're all, in other words, connected to spirituality. They're all connecting you to God, to spirit, to truth. All these different types of yagyas. So Krishna, he gave you could say like a metaphor, where he made the spiritual practices and the ideas he was teaching, he put them into the language of the sacrifice. So he, like an extended metaphor. Let's say if we were comparing a family to a tree, an extended metaphor. So I'm trying to teach you how to be good to your family members, do things for your family members, don't ask for stuff back, have mature relationships, consider their feelings, be empathetic, be honest and trustworthy. And I was trying to explain all these points to you, and then I invoked the metaphor of a tree. And I said, your father and your mother are the roots, and you are the trunk, and your siblings are the branches. And all of your activities are like so many leaves. But you have to have some common ground that you stand on and nourish the roots and nourish your family members so that all the family members will flourish. And you got to pay the most attention to what your parents say, which are the roots. And don't sacrifice yourself for your family, otherwise you're cutting off the trunk to save the branches. You have to at least be capable of taking care of yourself before you can start taking care of others. And then the children that are had by your family, those are the fruits. They make the whole thing worthwhile, the whole endeavor worthwhile. And your job is to add stability, like the trunk of a tree adds stability, like the branches add stability to carry the fruits. But they also extend out so that more fruits can be born. So, like either you just run with an analogy and you get into it, you flesh it out, and you give more and more, and it becomes rich, and you make the points you want to make by using poetic language and using a metaphor. You follow? So Krishna did that with the spiritual teaching he was making and the old school Vedic sacrifice. Then what he did was he took a number of different spiritual activities, which might be seen as less important than the old sacrifice, or they might be seen as the new stuff, better than the old sacrifice, or they might be seen as categorically different than the old sacrifice, like doing pranayama versus doing the sacrifice. And Krishna used some of the yajna language in the fire of this, and the fire of that, and the fire of this, to communicate that the same idea he wanted to give with the tree metaphor also carried through for all these different things that he was talking about. Did you guys follow that? That made sense. Did you guys follow it? And so, what you're getting here is it's Catholic. The word Catholic I guess it's in Latin. The word Catholic means? It means universal. So like the Orthodox Church, the Eastern Church, refuses to call the Catholics Catholics because they say, we are Catholic. We're the universal church. We're the original Church of Christ. And the Catholics also call themselves Orthodox because they also feel that they're Orthodox. And so in this way, they continue to fight by not even giving each other their own name because they each picked a good name, and so the other party wants to still keep that name. You follow? Like, if black people want to be able to call people brothers, and Mexican people want to be able to call each other sisters, but then they're like, wait a second, I'm going to use brothers from my tribe too, and and the other guys are like, I'm going to use sisters from my tribe as well, and then they end up not conceding that any of the language belongs exclusively to one group because they like that language and they used to use that language for themselves, and when they split up, they're not willing to concede that I can't use that language anymore. So anyway, the word Catholic means universal. So Krishna is being very Catholic, broad-minded in this verse. All these different types of yajna, they spread forth from the mouth of Brahman. Meaning that they're all spiritual. They're all connected to Brahman. They're all enunciated in the Vedas. They all lead to the same place. Also, the fire is the mouth of Brahman as well, the sacrificial fire, because you feed it. You put things into it and it's consumed. So these sacrifices exist within the mouth of Brahman, meaning if you do them, you'll get some spiritual benefit. You follow? Karma Jan Vidhi Tan Sarvan. Know that they're all born of karma, of action. In other words, you have to do something. You can't get away just doing nothing. Evam gyatva vimokshase. Vimokshase. And knowing this, you will be liberated. So if you know that you got to do something in this world, and you know that there's many different ways to worship God, and you value the spiritual connection that all these practices can give to their practitioners, that knowledge, that awareness, that commitment to doing something while you're here, but doing something spiritual, you'll be liberated by that. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. You guys follow that? All right. Shreyan dravya mayad yagyat jnana yagya parantapa. Shreyan dravya mayad yagyat. Better than the sacrifice of material possessions. Dravya yagya, or the sacrifice of things, of stuff, was one of the yagyas mentioned. Better than that sacrifice. Now, just by mentioning this, better than the sacrifice of material things is the sacrifice of knowledge. But what's happening here? What's Krishna doing here? Who can see?
He's trying to lead to something that's better than all of them. Like they all lead to the same thing, so why not do this thing?
Okay. He's saying there's something that's better than all of them. Okay. Of course, Jnana Yagya, which is what he says, is one of the yagyas offered. So he's saying better than all of them, but he mentioned both of these types of yagya, and he's saying one is better than the other. But he's already mentioned both of them. So if he's going to say something's better than all of them, then that wouldn't work, because what now he's saying is one of the ones that was mentioned. Did you follow that?
Yeah.
If I say A is better than B, and I give you a list, A, B, C, D, E, then I say A is better than B, and I ask you, what does that mean? And you say, it means that there's something that's better than A, B, C, D, and E. But I just said A is better than B. Where is the indication I'm trying to get beyond A? Did you follow that? What do you got? Focus. It's a small group. Let's win this. Yeah.
Is he trying to say that all of these processes...
What was the last verse?
Last verse was that you can't even do...
No. What was the last verse?
That sacrifice of knowledge is better?
No. What was the last verse?
You will be liberated.
Yeah, what was before that?
All the different types of sacrifices are approved by the...
Okay, and what's that statement? I just told you what that statement was. Describe that statement to me.
That statement means that all these processes he's described are lead to liberation.
Okay, good. What kind of statement is that?
It's a spiritual statement.
It's a spiritual statement. What kind of spiritual statement is it? It's inclusive. What's another word that could be used to describe this statement? That all these sacrifices are in the mouth of Brahman. They're all ways to connect with divinity. They're all legitimate. They're all authorized. They're all valid. It's inclusive. What else is it? It's spiritual. I could be spiritually exclusive. I could say you're going to hell and I'm going to heaven. That's not necessarily a material statement. It's just an exclusive and spiritual statement. Therefore, spiritual by itself does not indicate broad or narrow. Think more clearly. Don't just throw out words to say something. Think. Spiritual is not synonymous with broad, is it? No. The statement is inclusive. What else is it?
It's putting them on an equal playing field.
It's egalitarian. What else is it? It's Catholic. I spent so much time defining this term for you guys in the last 5 minutes. How did you forget it? It's broad, it's Catholic, it's universal, it's egalitarian. Do you not remember me just elaborately explaining this to all of you less than 5 minutes ago? How is it that in such a short period of time you're struggling? Krishna's last statement is what?
It's definitive. It's egalitarian. It's Catholic.
Good. What is it?
Definitive, spiritual.
Definitive? I don't know what definitive means. He said it, I let him get away with it. But it was a dumb statement to make. It added no value to the discussion whatsoever. But I let it go because I'm trying to build a little bit of credibility. But now you're copying the mistake he made. I can't let it go anymore.
It's universal.
All right, it's universal. Give me 5 words like universal.
All inclusive. It's all encompassing.
I don't know if it's all encompassing because that would be it's saying there's nothing that's outside of it. That's not what it is. Go. Broad. Another one. Equal. Egalitarian. Another one. Inclusive. Appreciative of other points of view. Friendly towards other traditions. It's broad-minded. It's considerate. It's easygoing. It's I don't know if it's dynamic. I mean, I could say you're all going to hell and I'm going to heaven, and I can make that statement in a dynamic way. I could say by doing this, you're going to... dynamic, I don't know. I mean, there's a million ways to define dynamic. I don't see how inclusive and dynamic are any way synonyms. What is it? It's easygoing. It sets a low bar. You follow? It's Catholic. It's universal, etc. You get it? Okay. What's this one? Better than the sacrifice of possessions, Dravyamaya Yagya, is Jnanamaya Yagya, is the sacrifice of knowledge. What is that statement? It's exclusive. What else is it?
Narrow.
It's narrower. What else is it?
Gives direction
It gives some direction. What kind of direction does it give?
about what's better than
It gives so it's comparative. Giving direction could be that everything is equal. It's giving direction that everything is equal. So you've struck out, I think, 5 times in a row now. Giving direction, you get no credit for that because it's not giving any direction. It's giving direction that it's a comparative. There you go. It's hierarchical. It says one thing is better than another. What's the difference between the 2 statements?
One has a specific point of entry, and the other one is kind of broad. It's several points of entry.
Okay. And it's not terrible. It's a D, but it's not a fail, which I guess today Ds are good. What is it?
It narrows it.
The 2 statements. Tell me about these 2 statements. We've now read 2 statements. Analyze the 2 statements in relation to one another.
what's hierarchical and what is not.
One is hierarchical and the other one is inclusivistic. That sort of says it all, doesn't it? Is that better than what you said? Way better, right? So we have now a structure. This is better than this. This is better than this. This is better than this. And we now have an inclusive verse. Both these things are really good. Isn't that interesting? In 2 verses. One verse is super inclusivistic. We're all part of the same family. The other verse is totally hierarchical. You're better than you. You get it? Is that noteworthy? It's unusual, isn't it?
Super contrasting.
It's very contrastable, right? Okay, you see it? Because it's super clear to me. Is it clear to you guys? Now it's clear, right? It's like, it's dynamic. It's spiritual. I don't even know what that, it's definitive. I don't even know what those things mean in relationship to these two verses. It's literally like you're just mumbling incoherently like a drunkard on the street. That is the philosophical equivalence of those points. They're utterly useless, and in fact, they're worse than useless. You've stolen everyone's time, and I'm like that statement, I can't remember, I've become dumber as a result of listening to you. You follow this? You guys see it now? Okay, now we're on point. Dravya Maya Yagya. Shreyam, better than Dravya Maya Yagya. Better than the Yagya made up of stuff. Jnana Yagya Parantapa is the sacrifice of knowledge. Sarva Karma Akilam Jnane Parisamapyate. Everything is accomplished completely. Everything is understood completely. All action is understood completely in knowledge. All actions are understood completely in knowledge. Text 33, everybody. What does that mean in relationship to the verse? This is even like a little bit of a stretch for me. Parisamapyate, it's fully understood, it's fully assimilated, it's fully achieved in knowledge. What? Sarva karma akilam. All karma without exception. What does that mean in relation to, like, because we're reading these verses, right? So you gotta fit that, and that's a jigsaw puzzle, right? You gotta fit that piece in with the other pieces, so we're making sense of what's being said because we're moving slowly and methodically. We're assimilating one point, and then we're moving forward to the next, and we assimilate that point with the structure we already have. Unless something happens that shows us that we were off the whole time, in which case we got to make a new structure. But otherwise, we're trying to fit the jigsaw pieces into the puzzle. This is a new jigsaw piece. What does it mean?
Well, the first verse kind of gives equanimity to all these entry points and deliberation.
Equanimity means...
like all are acceptable.
there you go.
All are acceptable, but then it starts to be a hierarchy of...
Equanimity more is like you're equal-minded about something.
I don't know why I like that word tonight.
Anyway, good recovery. I'm going to give you credit on the pivot. We got a low bar today. You got over it. Good job. Keep going. Just reframe.
And then, if Krishna establishes a hierarchy of, well, all are acceptable and approved, Yan is the better of all of them. Maybe that...
All these yogas are good, but actually all the stuff that involves doing stuff is less important than doing something for the right reason, with the right mindset. That's the best. Okay? And therefore, fit this last jigsaw puzzle. You haven't done that yet. All you do is recount the previous two verses.
Therefore, by doing the sacrifice of knowledge, you completely understand fully what the purpose of all of them together are supposed to be.
Yeah, you find some reconciliation. All of your actions are pointed in the right direction. Your actions are not disjointed. You can understand everything that's going on the best. You can comprehend all these different types of people and what they're doing. You're above all of them. You're doing the right thing for the right reason. You'll be able to navigate what the right thing is. You'll be able to see the value in all the things and then be able to navigate which one is the best. Everybody else is doing something which is partially good, which has part of the picture, but you'll get the whole picture within knowledge. It's not just what you do, it's why you do it. And when you're doing things for the right reason, then you really get it. You can really see what's going on. You have clarity, and then everything becomes accomplished. Everything is fulfilled. You've reached the zenith. You've achieved the purpose of what you're trying to get, which is liberation. And therefore, all these different actions are meant to bring you to a place of knowledge. They're meant to help you get to a place where you can see things. And once you're there, then everything has been accomplished. Everything makes sense. Everything's been achieved. Everything's been comprehended. Right? That's what you're trying to say? Yeah, I think that's good. I give you credit for that. I think you did good. So you guys follow this now? So now we got 2 verses. What are the 2 verses? Oh, and we'll just read the translation. The sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Okay, so 2 verses. Explain to me what the 2 verses mean, Dhyana. Do not make any mistakes. Move slowly and methodically. You can say something super simplistic. You can be totally repetitive, but do not make any mistakes.
It's differentiating. It's saying that all sacrifices and yogas are good, but
All sacrifices
or yogas,
or yagyas are good. Perfect statement. No flaw. Keep going.
super simple, but actually those performed in knowledge or sincerity are better.
You added your own thought, and I think that's good. You extended what we've said in a way that was congruent with everything we've said. You said something I did not say. You said but the sacrifice performed in knowledge or with sincerity are better. Sincerity of purpose. That is something I did not say, but you came up with a related term to the idea of knowledge or purpose or intention, and you added a new word that I had not thought of, sincerity, which fits like a hand in a glove. And without understanding and getting chastised when you go wrong, you won't learn how to, what do I want to say, carve your way through a verse and like hit the groove and like and stay within the confines of the verse and not just spaz out. Almost like you guys just vomit occasionally. Like if you're walking with somebody, they just pass stool all over themselves randomly. Like it's like incredibly inelegant, and it makes them a very, very bad traveling partner. And so that's what I feel like studying verses with you guys are. At least earlier today it was like that. You just had these random spastic Tourette's-like statements of cool sounding spiritual words that had no meaning whatsoever in relationship to the verse or the meaning of the verse. You weren't in the cut. You weren't in the groove. You get it? But now that I got on your case and I threatened you and I chastised you, now all of a sudden now at least you're in the groove. You're the worst performer and you just did a great job. Because focus creates intelligence. You get it? All right, you.
So Krishna is saying there's all these different entry points in terms of what you do and the yagas you do, and then he's saying those are originating one from one.
There's all these different types of yagyas, which is great. You said entry points. I hadn't said that. That's a totally fine way of describing it. And they're all coming from the same source. And so now you're directly saying what the verse says. But this is a nice point because it's saying they're all from the same place. It's because you might think that they're not, because it says bahuvida. There are many types. And so that creates disparity in a sense that there's many types and they're disjointed and they're not together. But actually they're all within the mouth of Brahman. So there are many entry points. It might appear to be different, but they're all coming from the same place. Excellent. You also said something I didn't say. Added your own thing to it. That's great. A little of your own panache, a little of your own insight, your way of thinking about the world. But you're still in the groove. You see that? You understand that? Good. Keep going.
Then he says, therefore you should do work. So again, or the overall theme that is within the context is getting Arjuna to do work.
So do something. And the result will be?
Liberation.
Okay, great. All right, fantastic. A1. They're all born of karma. So now you're methodically going through bahuvida, many types, and then brahmano mukhe, within the mouth of Brahman, disparate, but actually they're all together, right? And then karma jan. They're all born of doing work, right? You got that one? And then the last one that we just said, they'll lead to
liberation.
Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 points of the last verse. Excellent. Keep going.
Okay, then he says, then he's going through the hierarchical piece of what is better. So then better than sacrificing sort of material things and possessions, is saying the better sacrifice is knowledge. And
So the better sacrifice than sacrificing material things is the sacrifice of knowledge. And what does that mean, the sacrifice of knowledge?
so it's basically using your intelligence.
By the way, the sacrifice of knowledge is an enigmatic term. Jnana yajna is enigmatic, the sacrifice of knowledge. It's an enigmatic term. It is also multivalent. It's not 100% clear what he means, and it also has many potential meanings. And so you look at the surrounding words, the surrounding verses that we're doing, and then you get to take your shot to try and nail it. You follow? So what is the sacrifice of knowledge?
So the sacrifice of knowledge is using your intelligence to do the right thing, sort of in the manner of self-sacrifice, as it were. It's selfless.
All right, so now you're doing it selflessly. Excellent. So now when we say the sacrifice of knowledge, what we really mean is we're not saying don't do something, because we already established that all sacrifices involve doing something. But now we're saying do something with the right purpose, and the right purpose is selflessly. Excellent. Now you're bringing us all the way back to some of the selflessness of the earlier chapters. There's nothing in these verses that said that. But looking back at the Gita, what does that mean in knowledge? In knowledge that you're not the body, you're not the controller, you do your duty, you're not attached to results. What's a simple English word to communicate this detached sense in a way that people can understand? This detachment that's being, this aloofness from the results, from self-interest, from exploitation, from your own self-absorption, that you are the body, that everything's about you, and then that's selfless. So you took what we've been talking about for chapters and you distilled it down to one English word that wouldn't be obvious. I wouldn't have picked that word, but it fits. You see that? Excellent. Good job. So, okay. All right? You guys both get A's. And really, the fact that you get an A now means you should always get an A. And you guys should just take off the stupid hat when you walk in here, because it's simply frustrating for me and just makes it way harder to teach you. It's discouraging. But the fact that you guys just did that, when I got a little heavy, you guys all shaped up and all of a sudden everybody was firing on all cylinders, it means you could have done that from the beginning. Like if you walk in and your troops are marching and they're marching in a totally disjointed way and nobody's stepping in time and they're all spastic and they're vomiting and they're passing stool on themselves and just behaving just terribly. And then you take out a stick and you start whacking people. And all of a sudden they're marching in perfect form. And everybody's doing it right, in the right cadence. That meant they always had that ability. You didn't teach them how to do that. You simply chastised them for not bringing their A game, and then they brought their A game, which they always had in their back pocket ready to deploy. They just were choosing not to. You follow my critique? You wouldn't be able to clean your act up so quickly if you didn't have the ability to clean it up already when you showed up. All right, go. And if you get anything less than an A, I'm going to be super proud of you, because they got A's, and you're better than them, so you better get an A. Go.
Well, while wanting to take steps towards spirituality or to a higher purpose in this world, knowing that you at the very least need to do that, all of these processes and ways of going about it may be approved, but if you actually know why it is that you're doing what you're doing, that actually completes the work that you're intending to take that step for. So that sacrifice or that yajna, knowing why you're doing it, actually makes it complete and liberated, and then you're actually able to acknowledge how you're connected to all the other people doing different things at the same time.
Fantastic. You went all the way back to just living in this world. You got to do yajna. So you went back to the first verse that you guys skipped. That's great, right? Did it on purpose. And we went through both verses. You went through it in your own way, in English, almost like an English literature major. You didn't try to go methodically through the verses, but you kind of poetically strung them together. Got what's called a bhagavadgita. A bhagavadgita is a commentary where you paraphrase what's being said in your own word and catch the essence of it. You catch the bhav, catch the feeling of it. And so you very much caught the feeling of the verses. you brought up the point I brought up, which is that you can see the validity in other paths. You have this universal vision, which I thought was great. They didn't say that. You noticed that. That was something I contributed that I thought was valuable. That's why I contributed it. You picked up on that. You liked it. You made it yours. You made it real simple. Instead of saying selflessly, you said you're doing it for the right reason. You're doing it for the right purpose. You gave kind of a simpler explanation in some ways, like less definitive than what you said. There's a proper use of the word definitive, by the way. Less definitive than what you said, but still totally apropos and still totally valuable and totally useful. And so you did a great job. All of you guys got perfect scores, 100% for each one of you. So just don't play stupid with me. It's totally frustrating. All right? All you're in the groove. Do you feel it? You feel like you're in the groove, right? Like you got it, right? At a certain point, you're in that groove, and you're not gonna lose that. You get a feel for the Gita. You feel where those verses are going, and they kind of etch their way into you a little bit, and you can just click right in. You know, sometimes you get something like on a track and just clicks right in, and it goes real smooth. That's what we want to do with the Gita. We want to click into the Gita, what Krishna's trying to say. Okay. And now we come to the next verse, which I want to do two things. Number one is I want to explore the verse on its own. And number two is I want to see how the verse is related to the previous verses. So I'm going to require you guys to explain to me how it's related to the previous verses, and then I will take responsibility for exploring it on its own, and then you guys will have an opportunity to share your own thoughts at the end. But that's what we're going to do. This is a very important verse. One of those verses, probably the first verse in the Gita I ever learned. It's a very, very important verse. It's got the verse in the Gita that explains the guru. There's a couple of others, but this is one of the main ones that explains the value of the guru. The other main one is in chapter 4 as well. Evam para prapatam, and this is the second one. I think out of the whole Gita, these are the two verses which are the most related to a guru and learning things from a teacher. Tadvidhi, know this. Vidhi means, we used the term vidhi a couple verses ago, but it means know this. Tat, know this. Tadvidhi, pranipatena, by falling down in front of your teacher, by respect. Pariprashnena, by asking questions, from prach. And then sevaya, by service. Upjadekshanti te jnanam. They will show you this knowledge. Jnanina tatvadarshinaha. Those who are in knowledge, those who see the truth, they will show you this knowledge. Learn this by submission, by inquiry, and by service. Don't try to get fancy. Don't try to get fancy. It was like that famous scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indiana Jones is in Egypt and the guy breaks out a cutlass or a saber and he has a whole big fancy thing with his saber, and Indiana Jones just pulls out his pistol and shoots him. It's a funny scene. Everybody laughs in that movie. I saw that movie in the theater. That movie came out when I was a kid, maybe 1981 is be my best guess for when it came out, maybe 80. I saw it at Westwood, movie theater in Westwood, with my family when it came out. Whole audience lit up with laughter. That guy, he did this whole thing, and he just pulled out his gun and shot him. So you don't have to do fancy things. Sometimes fancy things make you look dumb. You want to be efficient. How is this verse related to the previous verses? Go.
In the previous verse, Krishna said, it's better to perform sacrifice in knowledge. This verse is explaining how you can get that knowledge.
Perfect. Did you have the same thought? Yes or no?
I did. Just follow leadership, serve, ask questions.
But that's not what he said. That's in the verse, but that's not what he said. How is the verse connected to the previous verse?
To get perfect knowledge or sincerity, look at people who are modeling that for
But what perfect knowledge and sincerity? I don't understand. You haven't connected it to the previous verse. Connect it to the previous verse.
By doing yoga notice.
Nope, you got it wrong. It's okay. It's not that you didn't know it. It's you're not thinking of how to teach. Go.
Well, if you need to acquire knowledge of why you're doing what you're doing, that means that you don't have it, so you need to find
No. You got to say it like this. You can say it in your own words, but you have to say it like this. The last verse said knowledge is valuable. This verse tells you how to get it. You have to say the last verse says this, and this verse says this. You have to connect the two dots. If you're going to connect two dots, you have to start with one point and then go to the other point. Or start with this point and then work your way back to that point. That doesn't matter. But you have to connect the 2 points. You cannot assume I know your starting point. You must state your starting point and then connect the dots. Otherwise, it has to be a fail. Both of you knew it, but you didn't say it right. He said it right, therefore he did it right. I figured you guys would all know this. But we're not talking now about not knowing it. We're talking about as a teacher, when you are teaching, even if you're teaching me, you have to teach in a complete way that makes sense. You get it? And that means you do not assume I already know the answer and then mumble something incoherently that because I already know the answer, I kind of know that you know some of the same language. That's not the way you teach. You assume I don't know and you make the critical points of connection. Does that make sense? Otherwise, there's no indication that you get the connection between it. You kind of got a few words, but your mind isn't working right where you can actually teach anybody. You want to try again?
Yes.
Go.
On the last verse, it spoke about knowledge that completes your act of sacrifice. So this verse teaches you how to go about acquiring that and from who.
Excellent. You.
In the previous verse, it mentioned how the best way to perform sacrifice is in knowledge.
Yeah.
And the next verse is describing the way to acquire knowledge.
Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, you get it? There's room. There's room to explore. There's room to think. There's room to get creative. There's room to get poetic. There's room for all that stuff. But it's not a free-for-all where we just mumble at each other incoherently and that qualifies because we're saying spiritual words are half sentences that seem to have some validity. You get it? You've got to do certain things. You got to get in the groove. You have to work methodically. You have to follow the verses, follow their train, add jigsaw pieces to the puzzle. You have to start with one point and move to the other in whatever direction you want to go. You got it? So we got 4 verses. I'm going to do it now myself. 4 verses. This yajna is so important. You're not even in the game if you don't do yajna. Even in this world, you got to do yajna. Let's speak of that world. I was saying to go to that world, but you can't even live in this world without yajna. And all these different processes, they have value. They're all connected to spirit. And they all involve you doing something. And they're going to help you get liberation. But amongst them, there's still a hierarchy. And when you're given stuff and you're doing stuff, if you're just blindly doing it, that doesn't have the same value as when you're doing it with the right mindset. Selflessly. Sincerely, for a spiritual purpose, then you'll be able to see how everything is connected. And your knowledge will be complete. And you'll have understood what I'm trying to teach. And this is such a powerful teaching. It's such an important teaching. It's such a critical teaching that you actually have to learn this from a teacher. And you have to have the right attitude when you go see a teacher. And the right attitude to go see a teacher is you got to be humble and you got to ask questions so you're not just blindly following because you want to have knowledge. You got to ask questions. And if you don't have humility, that knowledge won't go in because you'll be too competitive. And you got to do service. Because what can you do for your mentor? You can do some service for them. You make their life easier. They're giving you something that you can't pay for. They're giving you something which is a piece of their heart. So what do? You make their life easier. You do some service for them. And those who have this knowledge, those who see the truth, will then direct you. They will guide you. They will give you this knowledge, and the knowledge will become yours. And then you'll be able to achieve liberation. You'll be able to see how everything's connected, and you'll be able to get this teaching. You'll be able to embody it. You'll be able to assimilate it. It'll be yours. And then you could really say that your actions will have become complete. Because without this knowledge, your actions are still only partial. And so even though I appreciate all these different systems, there's still a hierarchy. They're still headed in a direction. Did you guys follow that? See how I just kind of went back and forth and just navigated between the different ideas and just bounced back and forth and kind of wafted back and forth between the ideas? See how easy it was and effortless it was? That's what we're going for. Don't limit yourself to what I'm doing, but that's, I definitely did a better job than all three of you put together. I even took the valuable things that each one of you said and wove it into what I was saying. You saw that? Gave like a nod to each one of you, and then moved on to my own points. Stuff I hadn't said thus far, even more than what I'd said thus far. That's what you want. You want to be able to flow with the verse. And get in that groove, and then you can flow. Like a river. You get in the river, and then you're flowing in the river. That river allows you to just cut through mountains, everything. But you got to get in the flow of the river, and then you're in that flow, and then everything is very smooth. If you go too far out of the flow, then you're on the shore. You're not in the river anymore. But if you do it right, you get it? If you do it right, then you're in the river, you're in the flow, and you can really move. All right. Pranipat. Pat means to fall. Ni means down. Pra means especially. Pranipatena. By falling down. By falling down. Literally, by offering your obeisances, by falling down in front of your teacher. Are you supposed to physically offer, like bow your head down in front of your teacher? Is that what it's trying to say? Answer. Non-rhetorical.
I think that's part of it, but not full.
It's certainly part of it. We actually bow down in front of our teacher. So it's not that that's not what you do. But then bowing down in front of your teacher also, there's a mood that goes with that. It's not just the act of doing it, there's a mood behind it. You appreciate so much what this person's giving you that you approach them humbly. If you don't approach them humbly, you won't be able to digest the knowledge. But then there's a fear of you blind following. It gets kind of culty real quick. So then it's counterbalanced. Pariprashnena. Prashna means question, from prach, to inquire. Pariprashnena, by questions. It's a really nice compliment. There's the humility in the approach, and there's the questions. Prabhupada in his purport, he says, blind following and absurd inquiries are both. Can you guys find that for me? Huh?
By submissive inquiries.
Just find both blind following and absurd inquiries.
Page 221.
How many lines down?
Let's go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There you go. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. See that? Prabhupada really, he nailed it there, right? It's not just pranipat and it's not just pariprashna, it's both. And if you ask just questions to ask questions with nothing behind it, just like when you drivel words out of your mouth, like they have no value, it doesn't help. And so when you ask questions, just ask questions, you just look stupid. You should have questions. If you don't have questions, what's wrong with you? What kind of dullard are you if you don't have questions? I've got a ton of questions at all times. It's stuff I'm thinking about always. You follow? why aren't you meditating on life and coming up with questions? What's wrong with you? Like I said, what kind of a buffoon are you if you're not having questions? And not just questions for questions' sake, but actual questions which have value. That's the absurd inquiries. And then blind following. You're bowing down, you're offering respect, but you're not offering respect for nothing. You're looking to get something, and this person has it. What they have, they see the truth. What they have that knowledge you want. And so you approach them with these two things. It's a great thing, but still, just coming at the teacher humbly, that's okay, that's something. But if you want to create intimacy, where the person is inclined to pick you up and put you on their shoulders and let you see for miles and miles, then you got to add something else to the equation. And what's that? No, that was already one of the two things we added to the equation. So you just repeated the two things. One of the two things I mentioned. I mentioned questions. I mentioned respect. I mentioned questions. I mentioned respect. You simply repeated question. I said, what else is there? There's a third thing has to be added, and you just repeated number 2, which is just totally vexing for me to have you do that. It's okay. Don't get too bummed out. It's okay. You're good. It's not that bad. But it's pretty stupid. I just said, we got 1 and 2, and we got to add another number. I got 2. I'm like, wait a second. I just said 1 and 2, and then what's the other number? And you're like, I got 2. That's how I'm hearing what you did. What would you think if somebody did that to you? I got apples, I got oranges, I need a third fruit. They're like, oranges. I'm like, no, I said I got apples and oranges. What's the third fruit? I'm like, oranges. Oranges. That's how I'm receiving what you're saying, okay? We already covered questions. Don't say questions. We already covered being humble. Don't say humble. Service. Why is service a missing ingredient?
It makes the teacher inclined to pick you up.
Why does that make the teacher inclined to pick you up?
Because the only thing you have to offer for a priceless gift is menial labor.
Yeah, that's not bad. Robert Greene mentions this in his book on mastery, that when you approach a mentor, the main thing you do for a mentor is save them time. You can do stuff for them which makes their life easier. Usually it's somewhat menial. And there's an appreciation because you're actually contributing to their life. You're not going to give them knowledge. Like, what's the likelihood you're going to teach me the Gita? Forgive me for putting myself like in a teacher role, but it's what we're doing today. I'm appreciating when you say things like sincere, and I'm noticing all the great stuff you contribute. I applaud you guys for contributing stuff, selfless, sincere, the way you flow through the verses nicely. So I can pick up stuff from you guys. But if I pick up stuff from you guys, it's probably just because I'm just that good that I can learn from anybody. You follow? It says more about me than it does about you guys. Does that make sense? And so you get people in life, in specialized topics, when you're studying something, you get people in life where it's not this egalitarian thing or this equal thing or this peer thing. They're actually your elder. They are your mentor. They know more than you do. They know a lot more than you do. They can lap you. They're just on a different level than you're on. You're decades away from being where they're at. They've got stuff that you'd never be able to figure out on your own. Or if you figured out, you'd be an old man by the time you got done, or an old lady by the time you got done. And great devotees are selfless, but if you don't approach them humbly, they almost can't give you the knowledge because it's like casting pearls before swine. So that humility has to be, and they'll give you some knowledge. But when you give back to them, you create an actual relationship, you create intimacy. And now there's a flow that's much stronger. You make yourself a fit receptacle for holding on to the knowledge that they're giving you. You demonstrate how much appreciation you have for their knowledge by giving back to them, and that makes you more receptive, and it also makes you more capable of holding on to that knowledge, and it makes it more capable for that knowledge to become yours because you've become transformed. If you make a mistake, the appropriate thing to do is to apologize for a mistake and make amends. And depending on the level of mistake you make, then the level of amends will adjust. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, I'm sorry. Sometimes it may take you years to make amends for something. But if you've made a mistake, and you realize you made a mistake, and you value that person, that relationship, you make amends. The act of making amends takes you to a dark place where you have to feel remorse. The act of receiving amends takes you to a dark place where you have to let go of bitterness and resentment. Both the person receiving the amends and the person making the amends, they both grow through the process. Through that growth, they both become better people. Once they become better people, what's not going to happen again? The same mistake. By going through a process, by doing something, you become a better person such that you won't make the mistake again. You learn your lesson. Sometimes you hold on to things. You hold on to ideas or memories because there's some lesson in them, some responsibility, some growth, and it haunts you. And then when you learn the lesson, when you make the growth, when you accept the responsibility, that act of doing that makes it so that that memory is no longer so painful, no longer so traumatizing, no longer so stifling and paralyzing. As you go through life, memory takes stuff away, time takes stuff away. But many times time just rivets you to your bitterness and your small-mindedness and your pettiness. There's plenty of just awful, cantankerous curmudgeons. There's like plenty of awful people walking around who are just filled with bitterness until their dying breath. And so it's not that time automatically fixes it. But when you have this attitude of growth, this attitude of learning your lesson, this attitude of putting skin in the game, this attitude of giving back, this attitude of participating, then that experience, that memory, even if it haunts you, you activate it, and you'll be able to dig into it, and you'll be able to find some value in it. Once you found that value in it, it's no longer just suffering, it's sacrifice because you got something out of it, you learned your lesson, and you'll never make that mistake again. You're ready to move on to the next level. There's always a way to engage with life and engage with whatever is happening and actively participate in a way that will help you to grow and help you become a better version of yourself. And so when engaging with a teacher, the way you engage with and create intimacy is you do some service. The great souls are always throwing out knowledge like seeds. But if you want that seed to fructify and grow, you got to water it, and that water is your service. You have to bring that. It creates a thicker connection. You become a better person through doing that. And then that knowledge will live in you. Did you guys follow that? This is a subtle point I just made to you guys. I don't think I've ever explained it quite like this. It's a subtle point. I don't feel like I did a good enough job describing it. But I feel like we honored the verse. I feel like we did enough where you guys should be able to at least get some sense of it. Thank you, IGTV. You guys want to give me some feedback?